Welcome, everyone, to the Informed Advocate Podcast. And I'm your host, Sharon. And this is the intersection of self care, advocacy, and compassion for self caregivers. So, for this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about work. The last time we talked about healing takes effort, and the work that goes into healing. And so that was more so, I guess you could say, more of the emotional side and the mental health side of it. And also, do remember that when it comes to our well-being, everything is connected. So when we are improving in one area, we're improving in the other area as well. Meaning when we're improving on our mental health and emotional wellness, that's going to help us physically. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit more just about sometimes some physical elements that we may have, regardless of what that is. And even though I do say regardless, I make it sound like it's can be so simple, but meaning that in including the most severe type of physical condition, medical condition that someone can have, the main point I really just want to make is that it takes work and effort in order to be well physically too. And then also sometimes some of the medical conditions and physical ailments that one may have, sometimes they come from what's going on inside of us emotionally, mentally, psychologically. Sometimes you may have heard doctors say, oh, well, we can't find anything, nothing comes up, it's all psychological. It doesn't mean that it's all in your head that you're thinking that per se, but what it does mean, we talked about stress in the body and trauma, and it really does have an impact on our physical being. And so, in saying all of that too, that it takes work and effort to be well. And when I say that, I don't want to make it sound like it's so hard, but at the same time, it takes work, meaning the things that you do and even the things that you don't do, because sometimes the things that we don't do, meaning if we're not eating healthy or not moving, put in some type of movement, not, really taking those deep breaths to really energize yourself and to, remove the toxins from your body. All of that comes to surface as well. And I can remember several years ago when I was studying personal training. Yeah. Yes, I am at least should I say, I have a certification in personal training. I just approach it in a different way. I tell you about that one day. But one of the things that's really stuck out when I was studying was a couple of things. One is just how profound certain medical conditions are, such as diabetes, because we have so many people who are diagnosed with it until it almost seems like it's normalized for people to have it. But we also know the side effects of having it too. And so just meaning that there are things that you can do to prevent that from happening. And if you are already diagnosed with that, there are things that you can do to reverse it as well. But the thing that really stuck out for me when I was studying is that they were saying, let's say, for instance, someone will have surgery, and it did used to be that way, that if someone has surgery, they put you on bed rest, take your time in moving and things like that, because they want to make sure that you're healing. But that is not the case anymore because they have learned that for someone who doesn't move, then you can develop atrophy, meaning that your muscles are weak and may not even have no more muscles to be able to move. And then that also brings reminds me too, I cannot remember his name, but I was looking at a podcast. I was watching a podcast, and there was a doctor. I want to say, I believe his name is Dr. Eli West. I believe that is his name. I cannot remember his book, but there were a couple of things that he said that got my attention. And I know he was talking about people who, who've had surgery, they have anesthesia, and that, pretty much certain things can happen if they stay under too long. But the main thing, there were a couple of things that he said, but the main thing that he said that caught my attention was that after the surgery, after someone comes out of it, he was saying that he really encouraged the patient and the family and staff to have that person to get up to move. Because I can't remember all of the things that he said about it, but that just stood out because, again, you're thinking, oh, they've gone through all of this, they need to rest their body. But he was saying something to the effect that when a person don't move, then that really has a big impact on recovery. The other thing too that I want to point out, and I've learned this because I've had surgery on my shoulder, my rotator cuff, several years ago. And one thing I tell you is that when the physical therapists tell you to do exercises, you do them. It's almost like, how they say about antibiotics, you continue to take the antibiotics even after you're feeling well, continue to take all of it. The same thing when it comes to physical therapy. It may not seem like it's doing any good or you're getting any benefit, but it's really retraining your muscles, retraining your joints, retraining everything. And so again, it's just really important to be able to do that. And we are the sum of our patterns. We are the sum of our habits and anything that's repeated. So we're teaching ourselves, teaching our body, teaching our muscles, teaching our genes to do something. So why not teach it to do something good? I always say if you do something 3 times, especially if it's something that's not so good, it's almost seems like our inner self just picks up on that. And we have to work even harder to pretty much override that as well. But again, the main thing that I really just wanted to point out is that when it comes to your physical health, beyond, doing what the doctors say to do, I would say to expand your knowledge, to do research, to talk to other people. Because one thing that I have learned, one, in the mental health space, and then two, just by being human, just by being a person, is that it really takes different aspects because sometimes we only know what we know in the way that we know it. But if we can take this one thing, and again, it's not really looking at the problem per se, but it's really looking at solutions for the problem. Because if you're focusing just on the problem, then you're not going to get anywhere anyway. And so, again, when it comes to medical conditions, any physical ailments that you may have, really research and take action of trying different things that you feel, again, as an informed advocate for yourself, and especially if you're helping someone else or you're supporting someone else, is to really look at so many different ways. Because one thing that I have seen and even experienced myself in certain ways is that the medical field can have one way of looking at something. And I'm just saying that, of course, there's many ways, but let's just say they have one way of looking at things, but sometimes they may not consider the other things. And sometimes the other things are really where a lot of us are rooted in anyway. And, we kind of stop doing it. And so, revisit some of those things that are cultural for you. It's almost like what my grandmother said or anything like that. And so, the other thing is, definitely the healthy eating, that's going to take you a long way. And, when it comes to, you remember the 5-5-5 stress busters, all of that, play into this as well regarding you being healthy in every way. And it's like when you're not healthy physically, that's going to impact you mentally. When you're something going on mentally, that impacts you physically too. And so when it comes to both of them, it really does take work, meaning some effort for you to do something. And even for someone, I would say, because what I've learned is so many different ways of doing things, and even some things I have not even considered, because it wasn't until, I started like with meditation and yoga, and especially with breath work, it never crossed my mind. It's like, we always hear about, doing cardio or aerobics for your lungs. And the thought came across me, was like, well, what about those individuals who are bed bound or wheelchair bound and they're not able to get up? How can they still, get, their heart rate up? And so in doing this work and what I've seen, it's the breath work. I mean, you can sit in a chair, you can sit up, if you're able to stand and, you're doing some breath work, it really feels like, I mean, I've experienced it when I've done breath work, especially in the guidance of someone else. It really felt like that I were, was running. And so there are so many different ways. And again, the main point I really just wanted to say is that when it comes to your medical conditions, ask questions, and again, this is holistic. This is about holistic. So this is about finding so many, and I'm saying so many different ways, but different ways, looking through a different lens, because sometimes looking at it just in one way, it can limit you. And this is sometimes another reason that we may be stuck and that we may be suffering and have challenges, because we're just looking at it just, through one lens. And so, when it comes to the Informed Advocate podcast, it's about having an open mind, is being able to see things in a different way, and to at least consider, and with a lot of things, with most things, they are, I was kind of like to say, they are usually a gentle way so that you can take care of yourself, and you're able to decide on that, because when it comes to some other modalities, sometimes there's so many side effects. So that's the thing to consider too. If you're taking, let's say, medications, what are the side effects of me taking this medication versus if I, let's say, meditate? Are there any side effects of meditating? Some people will argue to say that there are. I'm not saying that there are not, but what I will say, it is all about you retraining yourself. It's the effort that it takes. And so you can be gentle with yourself, even when it comes to, your physical wellness, because, one step at a time, we talk about the 5-5-5, 5 steps or 5 minutes for 5 days. And so you can literally take 5 steps, and that is, your capacity for that time, then increase it, do 5 more steps or whatever it may be, 5 more movements, 5 more breaths, and just continue to add that. And so just wanted to remind you that when it comes to your well-being, it really does take a holistic approach, and to look at your physical wellness in a pretty much holistic way so that you can be better equipped and so that you can use all the things in your toolbox and to add things. That's the thing. This is how we add to the mental wealth, is to pour into that, because the more you open your mind, the more you consider, certain things, then you're able to make those decisions and you're not under duress when you're making decisions or anything like that either. And so again, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Informed Advocate podcast.